Survival horror games are more of a rare commodity when you take a gander at the Wii U eShop. There's certainly a lot of different types of platformers to tinker around with, but survival horror is relatively untouched, and Curve Studios adds a notch in the belt for this particular genre, with the trippy and extremely pixelated game Lone Survivor: The Director's Cut. Lone Survivor is nothing new, as you may have already taken the trip through this hazardous and bleak world back in 2012 on PC or PlayStation in 2013, but it's never late than never for a Wii U release. To be honest, this is my first time ever taking a crack at Lone Survivor, and I probably would have skipped over it if it wasn't for the praise I kept hearing spewing out of people's keyboards. So, wouldn't you know, here I am now with a figurative copy of the game in my hands. Lone Survivor has you taking control of an isolated survivor only known throughout the entirety of the game as you, and he constantly wears a surgical mask that eerily looks like a permanent smile that just wants to creep you out. What do you want from me? In this post-apocalyptic world, he tries to survive against an infection that has run rampant and turned the world's population into aggressive, non-human, and sometimes well-fed mutants.
You know, Jenny Craig is right down the street.
And when I describe Lone Survivor as being a survival game, it really is just that. This isn't the type of game that you can just sprint through with guns a-blazing. No, you have to be more conservative in how you spend your resources that are placed sparingly throughout the world. Food is limited and can be found as you explore the world, which you must eat periodically so you don't starve to death. The main character also needs his beauty sleep or else he'll suffer from hallucinations causing the screen to go all psychedelic. Your flashlight also runs on batteries, which yes, run out, and ammo for your trusty handgun is in very short supply. The handgun is really your lifeline though when it comes to laying the mutants down for good, as there are no melee or ninja moves to master, but with there being such little ammo, you'll need to improvise with using rotting meat to lure them away, sneak past them in the shadows, or even using flares to paralyze the creepers. I do wish that you had a little more control over the aiming of the gun since there are only 3 rigid positions it can be placed in. I found myself missing my mark quite a few times when trying to go for the headshot, and if anything, the addition of an aiming reticle telling you where your bullets are going to land could have been useful. Now another big aspect of Lone Survivor are the colorful little pills. Yes, you can give your character 3 different types of medication to help you along in your adventure. Don't do drugs, kids. The red pills perk you up so you don't have to sleep, the green pills take you to a dreamland where a mysterious man with a box on his head, yes, I'm not joking, gives you additional free food and batteries, and the blue pill takes you to another wonderland where the man in blue offers you free clips of ammunition. This may seem like a cheap way to get extra resources, but that's not the only part these dastardly pills play, as gobbling them up will reduce your mental health, and depending on which ones you take, will have a factor in how the game will end. Yes, Lone Survivor has multiple different endings depending on how you play, and popping some pills certainly plays a part. One thing about Lone Survivor that I found to be quite confusing at times is the navigation. The game is set up like a side scroller so you can only move left to right, but the maps that you come across are not laid out in a way that it's easy for you to understand which way you are actually going. The map may be saying you're going upwards, but in the game, your character is moving either left or right, so it can be quite disorienting at times, especially in the beginning when you explore the apartment complex. You'll constantly be pulling out the map just to make sure you're going the right way, and one idea that I think could have worked really well in the Wii U version is having the map relegated to the Wii U gamepad screen, as it's not used for anything else besides off-TV play, which is still a nice feature by the way. That way, you can always see where you're going with a glance downwards, instead of having to bust out the map every 30 seconds. And though this game may be labeled as a survival horror title, don't really worry about it being scary. I'm not saying this as a negative to the overall game, but it's got horror elements so it may be unsettling at points, but it's not a game that's going to send a chill down your spine or cause you to skyrocket out of your seat from those horrible but wonderful jump scares. I guess this could have been due in part to the game's graphical style as a 2D game with retro graphics, as it doesn't exactly ooze the same creepy factor as a 3D game that has many blind spots and corners hiding all them creepy crawlers. And speaking of the game's visuals, they actually look really good and are very heavy with pixels. There are plenty of dark and moody areas you'll encounter along with some nice lighting effects and dusty wind blowing across the screen. I did notice that it could be difficult to distinguish between what was a hiding spot and what wasn't, as they kind of just blend into the background. If the game was on the 3DS with the stereoscopic 3D effect, it would totally work, but since it's on the Wii U, things can get a little mushy. In terms of music, the game is pretty low-key. Throughout much of the experience, you'll be hearing plenty of low droning sounds which helps capture the feeling of isolation, since you're pretty much the only person left on Earth. But when the music does pick up at certain intervals, it's pretty fantastic, with the melodic rhythm of piano keys to a more upbeat rocking track playing at the title screen. The soundtrack might not pack a punch the whole way through, but when those groovy atmospheric tunes come to the forefront, it sounds really great. Lone Survivor is also a fairly short game, with it taking about 3 to 4 hours to complete it on the first run through. As I mentioned before, this game does include multiple different endings depending on your actions throughout the adventure, and since we are talking about the director's cut, there's a total of 5 altogether. Since Lone Survivor is a not so lengthy experience, it will make going back through it again feel not so much like a chore if you have the desire to do so. In all, Lone Survivor: The Director's Cut is an alright game. It's not something that is exactly mind-blowing where you'll need to run and grab your credit card for, but it's not something you need to outright skip. It does a pretty good job at making sure it's really about survival as you try to take care of your character's health and conserve ammo in the process. But not everything is all cherries and roses, as there are certain aspects that aren't exactly ideal, such as navigating the 2D world. But thegamingpixelshow.com finds Lone Survivor to be a good game. And if you like what you saw, please give this video a thumbs up and add your favorites and all that good stuff, and you can stay tuned for more videos in the future. But I will talk to you later in the next video, guys. Bye!